Good morning from Jeff's Little Engine Service. Today we're going to fix this, I guess it's a pressure washer thing with this, I don't know what it is, some sort of attachment, surface cleaner attachment. It's a Honda GCV 160 engine. Overhead cam. Apparently it won't start, so we're going to look into this thing. But I'm pretty sure we're dealing with a fuel delivery problem. So I'm going to zero right in on the carburetor, the fuel system. First thing you're going to want to do is empty the gas tank and dry it out real good to make sure you get out any sediment or whatever is in there. A lot of times you'll find sediment or water in there when you dump it out. I'll show you how I do that. Okay, so let's empty out the fuel tank. I have this little pump that can get you pretty far sometimes. I'm not quite sure what this is, but most Hondas have them. So let's see how well my pump's working today. Pretty good. You can also just tip this thing over, but do make sure that you dispose of the gas properly. I'll put paper towels in here to soak up the rest, and then let it sit out in the sun for an hour or two, and then blow some air, some compressed air down in there, and that'll clean out the fuel tank. Any remaining sediment that's in there will come flying out when you blow air down in there. Alright, so we're going to let that dry out and we're going to move on to the carburetor. The air filter looks good, not oiled up or anything. And 10 millimeter is going to get us pretty far here. You know, instead of taking this apart, I think I'm just going to go ahead and take the carburetor float bowl off first, which is real easy, and we'll look at the condition of the carburetor. We might not have to take everything off to fix it. Let's take a look. I'll prop this up a bit so we can all get a better look at things. You can see the float bowl right there. Now we're going to take the nut on the bottom off and see what's in there. Looks like I'm going to have to use the box end to get that nut off. Now you're going to have some gas drain out when you loosen up this float bowl, and that's just residual fuel left in the carburetor and the fuel lines, and we do want to get all that fuel out of there. After you get the bolt out, like so, just give the carburetor a little tap and it comes off. Sometimes the gasket stays in place, sometimes it comes off with the carburetor. If it stays in place, you're lucky. Now let's take a look at the inside of this carburetor. Now you can see there's definitely some sediment and crud in there. Crud. So, what we're going to want to do is clean that out so clean that you can eat off it. Yeah, man. And I'm just using some little tools here to scrape all that crud off and wash it out. A toothbrush here I'm using. So now we're clean, and you may be saying, Jeff, but that's not clean. And I would say back to you, well, none of that stuff is flaking off anymore, which is what we want. You know, in a perfect world, we'd get a new carburetor float bowl, but you know, if you just clean things out thoroughly and make sure there's nothing left in there to flake off, you're going to be good. I could soak this in a heavy-duty carburetor cleaner, maybe Coca-Cola, and probably get rid of that staining in there, but I think it's going to be alright. I'm just going to put it back on. You're going to want to make sure the fuel line is in on position, the fuel valve, and you'll see this is how you clean out the fuel line and any residual fuel that's left inside the carburetor. You're going to want to make sure that you check your main jet. It's located inside this tube here. It's up in there. It's a little brass component that allows the fuel to flow up in there. And it's a very tiny little hole. Something the size of a speck of salt or sand can plug it up and prevent your engine from running. To check it, I have a little mirror here that I can peek up in there. And I don't know if you can see that. Let me zoom in. So that's that little brass main jet up inside the carburetor. And if you look closely, you can see there's a little hole up through the middle of it. I'm just going to poke a little piece of wire up through there and make sure it's cleared out before I reassemble the carburetor. I suggest you do the same. It's a good idea to make sure that that is clear before reassembly. I don't think the main jet was plugged, but as I say, it was a good idea to poke something up in there. I'm also going to blow some air up through there and through the carburetor just to make sure things are nice and clean. You do have to be careful. There's a little pin that holds this float on. You may be able to see it there. Yeah, that little pin. And it just slides in and out, and if it slides out, the float will fall off. Easy enough to put back together, but it can kind of be a pain in the butt, so make sure you don't knock that pin out. The little bolt goes towards the front, and that's there just in case you want to drain the carburetor over the winter time, or if you think you got some water in there or something like that you want to drain out. But generally it's just as easy to take off the whole float bowl and clean it out that way. Not too tight. It is an aluminum carburetor body. Don't want to strip anything out. Let's see if I can fill this up without spilling any. It would be a miracle. It's a miracle. So I have the fuel valve on and stop switch on, choke on, and I'll turn on the water. Make sure water's flowing here before I attempt to start it up. I don't want these pumps to ever run without water flow. And I'm running it for a while because there's a lot of air bubbles in there. That should be good. All right, let's give her a shot. First pull, can't beat that, buddies.